Pushing feedback. Meet, go for it.
Well, one of the things about the concept mastery routine is defining a concept in your own words. So using your own type of ideas for keywords and examples and non-examples. And when I said UVA, I was actually being quite serious, because just being able to, even if it's like a small example, if that helps a student like make sense of the concept, then you shouldn't just shut that down. Like, embrace that. Maybe ask them to explain that. I know you're pressed for time, so I'm sure you were just trying to get it done. But just for future reference, challenge them to defend if a student makes an answer like that, because there might actually be an actual thought process behind it that helps them make sense of it in their mind, and if they say that, it might help other people around them make a little bit better sense of it as well, because maybe not everyone was thinking that way.
We had to actually Jeremy actually pulled out his handkerchief to dab Matt's eyes, because he turned to us and went, "I was being serious." He was, and so it was just that I knew you pushed for time, but it was that he actually flushed up. He went flushed as well. Flushed. He's like, "I was being serious." And he's a teacher pleaser, so you kind of threw him off a little bit. So it was weird. It was a real, because everything else you'd gone, and that one thing when you were rushing, he'd be, if that was a 17-year-old, or he'd be pissed at you.
Yeah.
And so just that balance there was something that you caught him on. He's not. He's over it now because Jeremy talked him down, but it's fine.
I guess it's kind of a question, but also, like, I didn't like that he didn't address the question about national, like, what a nation was at that point, because then he kept pointing things, and it was like, well, we still don't understand what our definition of nation is. And then whenever he did bring it, it was like, well, he did question it, but I felt like for that point, it was, someone made a point about, it has to be a country, and I was like, wait. And, like, you were just like, we're going to talk about it later, and you did bring it up later, but it was still like, I feel like it would have been better if you'd been like, you're right, sometimes it's not a nation, and we'll talk about that later, but addressing my question without having to go into details, I think would have been better, because then I'm not like, oh, was I thinking wrong, and you'll talk about it later. You get what I mean?
I think there's a sense of affirming, and I wrote down at one point, you kept saying after the just do it, which was nice, just do it. People were excited and they were moving, and he kept saying, "Oh yeah, we'll get to that. And if you say get to that one more time, then get to it. Let's move on," because we were all giving answers, and when you say we get to that, it means we're ready to go because we've opened up something that you want to explore. And then I'm not sure how to do it, but there might be a way of like affirming a person's answer, or say we are going to get to that. As the rest of the class work and go and say, "That's a really good point, and I think you're right, and I want you to be cued into this idea." And so it might be an individual affirmation if he's wanting to pull it out as a class later. So yeah, you've got to bring that up to me, but give them room somehow, even if it's just talking to you, to pull out the answer. And I think that comes with time, but I do like the idea that you were setting us up for something further down, but then let's move to it, kind of thing.
And my point was that he came back to it instead of just, and he acknowledged the fact that you all had brought it up before.
Yeah. I mean, I like that, but it was like I said,
but
if I was a 17-year-old and I didn't know that I was right, and he was just like, we'll get to that, instead of saying, you have something there that could be the case, let's talk about it when we get to it.
I think that I wrote down something like, excellent, I like your thinking, we will be using, and so it's like that affirmation that is needed, rather than just keep putting them off, because it's like, when's it, when? And then you don't know if you're right or wrong, so it's like, I love it, we are going to hit you on that one, just keep that in mind. You can't write worth crap up there, and you need to practice it, or you need to put that on a PowerPoint, because they'll make fun of you for that, and they'll use that. I can't read it, I can't see it, and that'll be your distraction. And it'll just become a running kind of joke that they'll use on you every time you try to write. So that though could have quite easily slipped into your PowerPoint. Those things, and you could have just moved it through. So that it was good that you used him to write, but you have to improve, or you've got to use it in PowerPoint, or have something set up for an overhead first. Tom, I'll go.
They were actually on PowerPoint.
They were?
Yeah.
Okay, well, don't put them up there. Yes, they were, you're right. Which brings us back to the comment on the PowerPoint. Do the called feedback on the PowerPoint, which you corrected.
The colors were too close to each other on the color wheel, and that was hard to see.
Which you knew.
Color wheel. Good reference.
Jeremy started coming over all elderly, he couldn't see, he had to ask me to help.
Visual technology class.
Okay, Dave?
This probably had to do with your time at the end, but I would say make sure you have a single definition for nationalism. We all went around and gave our different definitions, and they're all right. But if you put a definition on your test and it doesn't match up with one the kid has in his notebook, they're going to be pissed. I mean, they're going to be pissed because these are still kids and they want to know what the right answer is in the test. As much as we want to teach ideas to make them think for themselves, that's not necessarily how 3/4 of your kids are going to think. And they're going to want what the heck is nationalism and what do I have to know for the test. So I would go back the next day and say, this is our class definition. Like you can even say I took part of all your definitions or something, but make sure you have one.
I agree with Dave partially and partially disagree. It also depends, I think, on if you're going to ask a question where they have to define nationalism or choose a definition, or if you could ask them to write something about nationalism and incorporate what they think it is. So there's both sides.
Yeah, I think there's both sides there. I think there's ownership over making their definition. I would have liked to have seen your final concept diagram, because I may not have all the right words, but things I had that I could add from yours to flesh out my definition. It would have been the fleshing out to connect. So to see your final thing, but I think time may have caught us out there. But he makes a valid point both.
Kind of like just building off of that, using this particular tool is designed really, correct me if I'm wrong, to, like I said earlier, to put this definition in your own words so you can make meaning of it, so that when you do give us your definition, or we do get the definition out of the textbook, we know what the heck it's saying, basically. So, I agree.
Any more?
I was going to say, actually, one thing was, I noticed that maybe I'm misunderstanding what you were doing, but I thought at one point you were getting kind of frustrated with this group particularly, because they really weren't taking things that serious, and they kept joking around.
We had good answers.
You weren't taking things serious, so you kept making jokes about things. I mean, and that's your style. That's. But what do you do in a classroom when you have someone who doesn't take things serious and you really want them to? And I felt like you were getting kind of frustrated with that, and that's why when you heard Matt's answer, you shot that off as not being serious. That's what I felt like. You shot that off as not being serious because you're so used to not serious answers from this group. And so then it was kind of like he was suffering a repercussion that someone else had caused. And that's really hard. And so I don't even know if that's pushing feedback as much as that if that happened, just be aware of when that's going on, because that will happen where when someone else has done something, you've tried your best to like stop it, and it's just not stopping. Then all of a sudden something else happens, and you're gonna nip that in the bud, to begin with. So just that was about it.
I agree with Matt. I think you kept yourself very well composed up to that point, and when Matt said that, it seems kind of out. But maybe we're wrong, but it felt like at that point you kept yourself.